have Evangelist Cummings in studio to discuss the church and politics. Evangelist, let's start briefly by brief introduction. I know you as the evangelist, the advocate, the journalist. Little bit about Jeroy that our guests would like to know.
Well, Jeroy Cummings, like I said earlier on, I am from Liberia, West Africa. To be precise, from the borough of New Town, a place called Corner West, but that entire community now is, from what I've been told, is now in the Atlantic Ocean, and then later I went to the St. Kellerman High School in Corner West, then went to Morovia Demonstration School when I got promoted to the 6th grade. I moved to Gardnersville to join my grandmother and my mom. Went to the St. Peter's High School, graduated from Jimmy Jolocon, also a graduate of LIJ, Liberia Journalism Institution, in my senior year at the University of Liberia and Vision Bible University. The Lord changed my location. I've worked with a couple of radio stations. I started with the Liberian Christian Broadcasting Network as an announcer and later became program director. Worked there with the late Honorable Thomas Jokoti Wowoyu for 4 years. After those 4 years, I decided to move somewhere else. Then I joined Sarafina Ventures and Communications Incorporated, owned by, those days it was owned by Honorable Benina Yuri and Mr. Philibert Brown. I worked for them for approximately 9 years. And then did small consultancy work with the late Harry Gree and Simeon Freeman. Then I moved to the US in early 2010, and started working with ministry. Then I got actively involved with ministry and radio LIB, where I was as a talk show host for, I think, 2 years or so. And I just been all over the place doing what I love to do best. That's just who I am, just a quiet, going guy. But when I get before the microphone, the camera, I'm a talkative.
Thank you so very much for sharing that detail about yourself with our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Let's get started. Many of you have been talking and complaining about the church and its role in the affairs of the state, especially the faith leaders. Many of you have said they are not standing the way they should be standing to be that moral voice in the affairs of the state. We have a gentleman, you heard from him, Jeroy Cummings. He also has been saying a lot of these things along those lines, and so we brought in here. But Jeroy, let's get to it quickly. We don't want to waste any time any longer. First of all, we know you to be an evangelist, a journalist as well, and an agent of change. What is a church, or in other words, what makes a church to be a church?
We look at it from a Christian perspective. The church is the called out, the ecclesia, followers of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. The church, from other perspectives, one would say the church is not the building, it's the people. We are the church. We make the church. We comprise, all of us who go to the synagogue or the sanctuary, the people are the church.
Thank you so very much. Very good answer there. It's not the building. He said that's the people. So then, since we are discussing the church and politics, what has been the historical relationship between the church and the state that you want to share?
Well, when you go back to history, or going back to the historicity, you will notice that in the first century, the apostles or the prophets or the teachers, the followers of Christ or believers, tend to, they were ruled by pagan kings or pagan empires. And they learned to say, well, this is what we're going to do. The state, the empire or the emperor, they have their laws. We are going to do everything to abide by those laws, not to violate their laws or their rules.
Mhm.
In other words, so that they cannot think that their rules can supersede or exalt itself above the knowledge of God. So the church then, those days, the apostles, they decided to follow the teachings of the Bible and govern themselves, but they were conscious to the society. That's why you will notice in the days of old, the apostles or the prophets were speaking whenever issues arises, whenever there was a problem, the church will speak as the conscience of the society. So the church was not, or the apostles were not trying to impose their ways like how other philosophical people tell me that the church and the state are the same. They try to impose their idea or their ideology on people. No, that was not the case. In this 21st century, we're seeing a different church, we're seeing a different state. But in the days of old, the first century, it was not that way. The church was Lord abiding. The church honored the state. The church will abide by the rules set aside by those pagan empire. But they were also making them to understand that their rules does not exalt itself above the word of God.
Thank you, Jeroy. So let's go to Liberia and talk about that same historicity. We learned, and people argue that Liberia was founded on Christian principles. So from the founding of Liberia to now, let's go into that historical relationship between the church and the state, or political leaders and the church.
Well, in the case of Liberia, or we hear this slogan, Liberia was established on Christian principles. And sometimes I ask the people, what Christian principles are we talking about? If we were established on Christian principles, are we upholding those Christian norms or principles of God? The argument is, well, the Constitution was signed, or the founding fathers met in the Providence Baptist Church to sign the Constitution on it, to rectify or enact laws. The question is, how does that, what's the connectivity to that of the Bible? What's the relationship? If this nation was established on Christian principle, are we upholding those Christian norms? Because here's the thing, my brothers. In Genesis chapter 27, it talks about the curses when we deviate from the ordinances or the commandment of God. Moses was giving the children of Israel an instruction after they came out of Egypt, when he said, do not practice the things that the Egyptian practice. Now, here is a group of people who believe that they were established on Christian principles, that the Constitution was signed in a church. But are we upholding those laws that are found in the Bible? Are we doing what the Bible requires us to do? When in the same church, when the same founding fathers who came to Liberia, they met the indigenous there. The indigenous were practicing witchcraft, sorcery, all of these things, and they said they brought light. It turned out that the people who brought light, they themselves started forming different institutions, practicing, ritualistic healing, courtesan practice at a higher peak. Then it brings to one mind, where is the Christian principles then?
Right.
Mr. Cummings,
So, Jeroy,
go ahead.
go ahead,
Okay. And Mr. Cummings, I wanted to ask the question. So there has not been a time in Liberia that we can point to and say, hey, there was a time God's commandments were being obeyed by the church leaders and the leaders of the state. We can't point to any time in our history. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Now, let's go to, I will start from Totman, okay? Let's look at President Totman. He was actively involved in the Methodist Church. Some historians say that Totman himself was also a prelate. I stand to be corrected. Still need to do some research on how he was a prelate, okay? But look at Totman's life. In the days of Totman or the days of Barclay, the church plays a pivotal role. That's why you'll notice when Barclay was having some issues, the Sastan War, it was the church, the Catholic Church and other churches in Liberia that went to the United Nations that complained Liberia or took Liberia case to the United Nations. It was the church. The church was playing an active role. Yes, there were leaders those days in the church who were conscious of the society, but there were political leaders who were in the church who were not upholding, but they were members of the church, right? Totman being a prelate as the story goes. But look what he was doing. I'll give you one typical example. In the case of Madame Kodu, who was beheaded in Bon County, when Madame Kodu died, they took her hair and for ritual purposes. When that case broke out, according to history, when the case broke out, who was sitting in the judge chamber? It was William V.S. Totman. The president of the Republic of Liberia was sitting in the judge chamber only because the people that were involved were fraternity members, and Madame Kodu body or head was used for ritual purposes. And on that day, justice was not served in its totality for Madame Kodu, only because the alleged perpetrators were members of the same organization of that of President Totman.
So in short, you are saying that during that time period you just talked about, there were church leaders who were, the moral voices at the time, whereas there were some who were compromised, maybe especially those who were within the government at the same time members of the church.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Dennis?
Evangelist Cummings, so historically, what role has the church played in Liberian politics?
When you look at our politics today, there is a school of thought that says that the church has played a pivotal role in the politics, trying to help to guide the state, trying to make them to understand that the state, the Bible will not supersede your decision. You have a constitution that governs you. Your rules are there. But we want you to understand that we must uphold those laws and statutes of Jehovah God. The church has been guiding its members on what to do, how to do it, conscientizing them to vote right, so as to get a better nation. But whether the church was playing a role for canvassing in the early 80s and 90s, whether the church was playing that pivotal role, canvassing for a political party, no, the church was not doing so. Not until the 2005 election. But prior to those days, the church was only guiding its members and making them to understand, yes, it is your right by constitutional provision. It is your right to vote, but vote your conscience. It is your right to respect the laws of your different political party, their manifesto, but we want you to understand that whatever thing you do, wrong or right, has the propensity to sway the minds to do the good thing for their country. So because some of the political leaders came from different churches. So there were prelates who were using their pulpit to conscientize their members to vote right and do the right thing for the common good of the country.
We also saw that our leaders themselves were in the church. Okay, their participation in the church. And one example is President Tolbert. I believe also President Taylor was a deacon, I believe, in the church.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. In fact, our current president has built a church. So the participation of our political leaders in church, has that been positive, negative, or what has that produced for the country? How has that been?
In the case of the late William R. Tauber, who was then a Baptist prelate, one can say that Tauber's role was positive, and there are times where you could question as to whether this Baptist prelate was upholding the status of Jehovah God, because there were a couple of things that were happening at the time in the nation. And you say, reading history, you say, but this man was a Baptist prelate. But one of the positive things that I saw when it was 1966, I think the 1966, 1976 situation, when Ali Yancey and others were hanged.
76.
76, right? You can tell that.
79, I think.
17. I think the case started in 1966. Was it 1966? I need to check. Or 79, one of them. You can tell what the president did at the time was positive, because that was something during the days of President Tubman. That was something that in the entire Southeast and some part of Central Liberia, you will notice that it was just common. But he coming and taking a stand that even when I was told when fraternity members went to him, he said he will not see them. He can't talk to them. The execution must go on. And those people were executed. It helped to minimize, if not eradicate, but it helped to minimize ritualistic killings in our country. Mind you, now, in Deuteronomy, the Bible says, the blood of the innocent cries out to God for vengeance. So in that sense, I say, as a prelate then, he played a positive role. Yes, there were some other things happening. Yes, there were things that were going on. There were members in the government who were fraternity members who were practicing courtesan, ritualistic killings. But he, as a leader, couldn't just get his hand around some of the things. So as a result of that, some of the people around him didn't even like him, from the death of Ali Yancey and others.
And Mr. Cummings, what has been the role of the church in fighting the excesses of the state historically that you know of?
Say that again.
What has been the role of the church in fighting the excesses of the state from what you know of?
To be precise, what are some of those excesses?
Speaking against the ills in society, speaking against things like corruption, ritualistic killing that you talk about, not providing for citizens,
If we can go back a little bit, I will talk about two persons, and then one of them was a sheikh, and also a religious Islamic scholar. In the days of the late Archbishop Marco Bakla Francis, and the days not leaving our mother with the Minon Duklin and Bishop Brown and Sheikh Kafuma Konen, these are people who spoke to the ills in society. Whether they were going to come to the mosque to arrest sheep, he was saying the truth. Archbishop Marco Bakla Francis, you will notice when the 17 men took over, Mother Dukle invited them to go to church, to come to church. And they refused. And Mother Dukle said, you people will die the same way. You will die the same way. And Mother Dukle spoke on the ills in society. Bishop Marco Bakla Francis, the late, the reason why he was referred to as conscience of the society, because he spoke against the ills in society, ritualistic killings. He's not the only one. Reverend McCollin, who was at the Lassa Tenor Memorial Church, spoke against the rampant killings, the way people were treated in the country. Due to that, that's why April 6th, people were killed in the Lassa Tenor Church because of the grudge that Mr. Taylor had against that church or against that preacher. Because when he preached, he was one of those preachers, when he preached and say as he see it and say the doors of the church is open. So we saw the same thing in the case of Samuel Doe. Bishop Francis spoke. Reverend Reed, the late Reverend Reed, spoke against those ills. There were preachers who were speaking
And fast
continued
forward to Charles Taylor, who were the faith leaders that were always speaking against the ills in the society at the time that you remember.
Predominantly was Reverend the late Bishop Reed and that of Archbishop Marco Bakla Francis. Those were the two people, and Sheikh Kafoma Konen also was speaking on those ills. But let's stay to the church, because Sheikh is a different thing, because there's Shura in the Quran that one must uphold as it relates to some of the things we're talking about. Bishop Marco Bakla Francis, you will notice even when they had Greater Liberia, Bishop Marco Bakla Francis spoke endlessly, tirelessly on those issues. Reverend Reed spoke. You know, when I was on Fender, when Taylor's first visit to Fender campus, he went to see Bishop Reed, because the late Bishop Reed was at WADA. We were at WADA, and he was at the Science College at the University of Liberia. I remember Charles Taylor went to see him. They were saying that maybe they might kill him because he spoke. He spoke during the days of Charles, the late Samuel Doe and Charles Taylor. He was speaking on those things that were happening. And even after the war, up to the time the late Bishop Reed ran to become president for Liberia, he was still speaking. Michael Bakla Francis was still speaking until the day he started getting ill.
So Evangelist Cummings, historically that has been the case, right? We have some who were speaking against the ills in society, and there were some who were cheerleading the power.
Oh yes, we had cheerleaders, and I can speak to that. We had cheerleaders, religious hallelujah people, boys, who, because Taylor, here's the thing though, Charles Taylor was a deacon in the Baptist church in Oldest Congoton, and his pastor was then Reverend Joseph Gardier Johnson. He was there. But they never spoke concerning the ills, the things that were happening in Liberia. Reverend Johnson, during the days of Charles Taylor, was not speaking. Because Taylor and Joel and others and Snow, all these guys were in that church. That church, it was almost like what you have today, the Fokeklon church. Bulk of the big boys who were Baptists, they will go to that church. Some of them will go to the Providence Baptist Church. You will notice that during the days of Charles Taylor, all of the mysterious death and things that were happening in our country, the Baptist Church was not playing a pivotal role, speaking on the ills in society, whether it's the Palm Grove Baptist Church, the Carrisburg Baptist Church, you just name it. They were not speaking because Mr. Taylor was a Baptist deacon.
And Evangelist Cummings, for the sake of our listeners, if you can you list some of the specifics, I would want to use the word evils that were going on during the Charles Taylor administration that these religious leaders you're talking about were silent about. I remember the ruthless ATU beating on citizens in Liberia. What's the police force name at the time that Joe Tay was ruling? I just forgot their name, but Joe Tay was the head of the
police. They had SOD4, they had SOD. ATU, they had the RRU, and they had, you had this guy, Zupon, you had Sabodi, you had Atina Johnson, who died with, what's her name? One of these ladies who died with the late Walter Pendant and others that were in the plane, Joe Tay. These were people that were arresting people. Even when Councillor Frances Johnson Morris was arrested,
I remember
when she was placed in jail at this Central Prison, nobody could say a word. Most especially, we taught people from Taylor's church or from the Baptist church will speak. Okay, look at the death of
Something
Lord,
happened to Enoch Dokolie. Do you remember?
Enoch Dokolie. It was alleged that Enoch Dokolie was flogged. The Dokis, the death of the Dokis, the mysterious death of the Dokis, finding their body. I don't want to go to the graphic of the pictorial.
So,
Okay,
Cummings,
but people were not speaking. But I remember the Catholic Archdiocese, Bishop Francis spoke. Bishop Francis spoke on the death of Dokolie, the death of the Dokis. And there were so many things that happened in our country. Chucky and his ruthless gang. Okay? The issue of Jote going to the AG, the Assembly of God Church. When Bishop Winger was over there those days, when he went and disrupted the entire church service.
Evangelist Cummings?
Yes, sir.
So it seems to me that this has been the historical or the pattern of the church. Some for, some against.
Yeah.
What is different now?
Say that again.
I say it looks to me that this has been the way the church has been, right? Some for the government and some against, based on where they are standing.
And you know, there's a saying that says, I love this phrase, he who pays the piper plays the tune.
Right. And so my question to you is, what is different now? Or is
I don't see any difference.
So, Evangelist Cummings, the Enoch Dokolie situation that I asked you about, what was being rumored at the time was that he was placed into a mattress and flogged so that they will not be able to notice that he was being flogged. And that was the situation. And at the time, even people within the security force, you know, they are all Liberians through information leak, but some of these church leaders would dare not talk about it because, I mean, Taylor was that person you dare not speak against except for a few at a time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, during the death of Dokolie, who dared to speak? Yeah. Who dared to speak? You had RRU, you had the ATU, then you had SOD that Yeke was part of. Yeke, SOD 4. Right. There was a situation where Manazeke, they said they went to arrest, they went to arrest Manazeke. Now, here's the myth. How can you go arrest somebody and then you say the man was right around in front of you, then he opened fire? The reason why they killed Manazeke, because he was another notorious and ruthless general that came from the Unimbo, I think Unimbo or Unimbo KN. And there were all sort of things happening in the country that nobody dared to speak because Taylor had the AK-47. The person who will speak and they can't go after was the late Archbishop Marco Bakla Francis.
Right. And Jeroy, correct me if I'm wrong, was in radio, I mean, Star Radio at some point closed by Charles Taylor?
Yeah, Star Radio was closed by Mr. Taylor because Steve McConnell and others were out there reporting the truth. At the time, Star Radio was the only independent, I repeat, the only independent media institution whose, in her reportage, were balanced, very, very balanced.
But I think Radio Veritas were doing a good job at the time too.
Yeah, Veritas were one of those institutions. But listen, they couldn't touch the Catholic Justice of Peace. They couldn't touch Radio Veritas. They couldn't touch Bishop Marco Bakla Francis.
And Evangelist Cummings, specific something that happened. I don't know if you can remember during Charles Taylor time. There was this retired U.S. general who went to Liberia. I don't know what he went there for. One of Charles Taylor's boys killed him in his hotel.
In Mama Point.
Yes, in Mama Point. And up to today, that story just ended in breeze. Nothing came out of it.
They lied and said that from some former AFL soldiers were involved. That was a myth. It came from Charles Taylor N. Right. The killers, the alleged killers were people in Taylor's part of his group. It was not AFL soldiers who did the killing.
All right.
But that investigation, the government, the NSA, the CID, or the Liberian National Police, or the Justice Ministry, they didn't come up with nothing, tangible that anybody could say, well, these are the facts.
So
Thank you.
so go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I want us to go back to the topic, Evangelist Cummings. So what we see over time, and we can go as far back as Charles D.B. King, and even go Alfred F. Russell. We found out that these presidents or our political leaders, they always had a church, and because they are in that church, like, things are compromised, to put it, for the lack of a better word. So whatever the people are doing, the government is doing, that particular prelate will be quiet. That I want you to walk me through, if you know of any time in our history where the church has just been upright, or it has always been that way.
Sir, when you look at, the Bible says in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 4, says, by justice the king gives stability, but the ones who are greedy for bribe tears it down. In Genesis chapter 7, the people united themselves for the common good to build a tower. That cohesiveness was there, that unison was there. But was it for the good of the people? Was it to bring the people together to build a tower that was giving glory to God? No. That's why God himself came down and scattered and chakla them, in a typical Liberian parlance, chakla them. When people come together, the Bible says in Amos 3:3, can two walk together except they agree? So in our case, these leaders they position themselves in the church. Watch this now. In Joel chapter 1, when the sons of God went to present themselves to God, there in their midst was the devil. So we see the same thing today, that people who are practicing courtesan have transformed themselves to the angel of light. We make them mothers of the year, fathers of the year, elders, deacons, and deaconesses, and they sit in the church and they hold key position. And because they gave in, they now tend to influence some of the pseudo prophets and pastors who sit in the very church. So if that man is doing something negative in the government, he comes to church, the preacher will not speak on the ills in society. So it has been that way for a very long time. Let's check the historicity. Has been that way for a very long time. Most of our leaders today, you go in the legislature now, you will notice that some of the people are deacons and deaconesses or elders in their church, or father of the year, or special father in the church.
And Evangelist Cummings, you speaking truth here, in my opinion, that the church has not been up to the task,
No.
for the most part, except for a few who have been able to speak out, and it depended on that they are either not a member of the president's church, and then they will be able to speak out. So there have been few that have been speaking out. In today's Liberia now, do we have any speaking out, at least just as few days in the past?
That is laughable, because I'm going to throw some bomb here, and I owe no apology. Listen, in today's generation, from 2005 election, we saw a major split in the church. 2004, the church was falling, getting in a trajectory where the glory of God could be seen. You can feel the manifestation, the power of God after the 2003 World War I, World War II, World War III. Liberians were gradually moving in a direction where you can feel and sense the power of God. But the conscience of the society, the people that should be speaking, the church leaders, because of what transpired in the embryo stages of our country when it comes to the church, we don't have people who are speaking on the ills in society today, especially from the church. We don't. Maybe we can say, yes, Evangelist Cummings is speaking. Let me exclude myself from the process for now. You can say the evangelist coming is speaking. But I will tell you, there's a security implication to some of the people who really want to speak and why they can't speak. I will tell you. But now, as it is, people to be vocal on and critical on national issues, to conscientize the nation and its people, we don't have people who are speaking out today.
And Evangelist Cummings, what is the danger in the failure of faith-based leaders who should be the moral voice?
Mr. Sonny, before you go there, I want to challenge your comments on that, because we heard people like Reeves from the Baptist Church speaking against the ills of society. So how can you say nobody's talking?
Mr. C, let me say, Mr. C, let me say this. Let me say this. I will share something with you and your audience. 2009, the Lord gave us a revelation. The Lord gave us a revelation that Morovia was covered with feces, and the monument you see before the Satana Pavilion broke into pieces. That monument before the Satana Pavilion, where is it close to? The Providence Baptist Church, right? There were 4 demons, one in Bushel Island, one Central Morovia, Paisley, and the Somalian Drive. The Reverend you say speaking, that is now speaking. In that revelation, I saw him lying down among broken blocks. Broken blocks. The whole Providence Baptist Church broke into pieces. And he took a white megaphone and gave me the white megaphone in that revelation that, Jeroy, we fail. We have failed. It's your turn to speak. I said, no, I'm a journalist. He said, no, it's your turn to speak. I said, no, I'm a journalist. He said, Jeroy, we failed. Then I woke up. I had a friend, that was 2008. I had a friend who was visiting Liberia, the prophet, and an American old man who went to the embassy, the U.S. embassy, for meeting, and I shared a revelation. And he said, you have to speak. You have to speak. 2009, Archbishop Duncan Williams wrote Madam Salif and the Church of Liberia, wrote then a specific prophecy, something that I didn't see. But that same year, the Lord gave me the same word for word. Reverend Cassell, who happened to be my uncle, I was driving around the Somalia Drive and going to Freeport. We met. And I decided to explain to him. He said, Jeroy. He yelled. I said, what is it? He said, everything you were saying, Archbishop Duncan Williams wrote Madam Salif and wrote the church. We have a copy. As a matter of fact, we will be meeting at the Satana Pavilion when Bishop Duncan Williams come here. But I want you to meet the pastor. So I met them at the Methodist Church in Cinco. We met and they asked me to speak. And I got up and I started sharing the revelation. I remember the senior pastor for Beto in Togo, may his soul rest in peace. And I said, look, I don't want no trouble. I'm just a journalist. And he said, no, you are not. You are a prophet to nations. And what you are saying is the truth, because the thing is written here. We have the document. We were praying in this church for a confirmation. Later did we know that God will send you. Why am I saying that now he's speaking? Why he never spoke then? Why now? Why he never spoke prior to becoming a vice presidential candidate to the former bank governor? Why he never say, I will not run with the former vice president, the former bank governor, because there are alleged allegation of mismanagement of the central bank. You know, let me say this. This is the reason why people got problem with me, sir. When I say Bacchus Matthew was not the political godfather or Modi Democrat in our country, the reason is simple. Judas Nyerere, Patrice Lumumba, Jerry Rowland, Thomas Sankara, Nelson Haile Shasha Mandela, these people were constant. Consistency was the order of the day. Bacchus's last job in Liberia, he was a public relations officer for OTC. But this is somebody who stood up and said they will bring rice. They led riot that led to 14 years of carnage in our country. So the question is belated. When he speak today, He's not speaking as the reverend that I know, because by justice, the king gives stability. I cannot be part of a political institution or support a presidential candidate when there are some shady deeds surrounding him. When your presidential candidate was in an administration that introduced rampant corruption as far as GMAP. So why is he talking today?
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be judgmental of him. I'm not questioning the reason why he's talking. But let's look when Taylor was around. These were the big Baptist boys. These were the educators, the educated Baptist preachers. They never spoke. Why today? Or because they went to the executive mansion and people received money, so Reverend Reed come from there now, he start talking.
And Evangelist Cummings,
yes, sir.
Backup Matthew issue you were talking about, I was present at some point when Bacchus told many of his followers during Charles Taylor time that he wanted to be in the church now, to be in the choir, to be singing. And there was Bacchus who has given up his political advocacy, and that he did it over and over and it didn't get him anywhere. So you are right. He served as public relation officer for OTC that was very ruthless to the people of Grand Bassa County.
Thank you, sir.
They depleted the Bassa forest, deforestation that is supposed to be carrying on. They failed on that. But that leave that. Let's come to the question I was asking earlier. And we got some very good questions here that we'll be bringing to you too. Folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. We are in conversation with Evangelist Jeroy Cummings. And we are discussing the church, its leaders, and its role in the affairs of the state. And my question is, what is the danger in religious leaders or faith-based leaders not standing up for the state against the SSA in the state?
Here's, and I'll go to look at it from a biblical perspective. Mm-hmm. In the book of Esther, chapter 8, chapter 6, 7, 8, you will notice that there was a man by the name of Haman. Mm-hmm. Haman, who happened to be the grandson of Hagar. So in other words, he was an Agagatan, and he was carrying rage, vengeance inside of him. Mm-hmm. But something happened. He set a gallows to hang Haman, Mordecai. And Mordecai ran to Esther. Mm-hmm. Esther happened to be the queen. He went to her and said, listen, whatever thing affect us will affect you. It's not because you are in the king's palace. Whatever thing affect us will affect you. And Esther said, what do I do then? And she told Mordecai, I said, go tell my people to join me to fast and pray for 3 days. I'm going to go before the king. If I perish, let me perish. Here is the danger. In our dispensation today, if the church leaders sit down, the people who are their congregant, the people who come from their churches, that go to these different institutions to work, and they go to work and mysteriously disappear, and we discover their bodies in a vehicle, or we find their body in a place where they took body parts from them, and the church leaders sit and don't speak. Whatever thing affect the members will affect the church leaders. Only a church leader without conscience will not say we can't come together to speak on these issues and call the government for food investigation, or call the government to work on its security apparatus, because our members have been affected from these things. So that's why I gave the illustration of Esther, Haman, and Mordecai. If Brother C and I sit today and we're good people, we know what is unfolding and don't speak, it will affect us.
All right, Dennis, let's come to the final segment here so that we can open our phone lines. I'll call you, Brother Cummings.
Yes,
very
sir.
recently, you had a podcast and you had some interesting things to say. Mm-hmm. And we would need some clarity on those things. Some people felt that you were being very political. The first thing you said was that, Mr. President, something is coming it is coming soon, and you were referring to our current president, President George Manawia. What is it that you see coming that we don't see that is coming soon?
Let me go back a little bit to bring us up to speed.
Okay.
2016, I was in an exclusive interview with a journalist called Max Pacquiao. And I was asked a question concerning the upcoming election, the 2017 election. And what is my take? Because Max heard me talk about the US election and a prophecy that I gave that Donald Trump will be president and nothing will stop it. So he was asking me in respect to Liberia, because he heard me talk a lot of stuff about Liberia. And I said to Max, I said, before we get the next president in 2017, the whole electoral process will go to court. They got to go to court because there will be some issues that will take them to court. But after the court proceeding, then we will have the next president. He yelled, he said, man of God, I said, keep the tip. Quote me. Anywhere you go, Liberia, entire electoral process will go to court after court before we get our next president. 2017 came, they went to court. I was sitting here minding my business, not having no interest in any political activities with Liberia. Then the Lord gave us another revelation. And in that revelation, and I will sit here and people can trace the things, the events and things happening in the country. In that revelation, I was told that President Weah will become president because this is what the Liberian people want. And the Holy Spirit said to me, he said, tell the president, disassociate himself from fraternity organization, do not accept names from the Zols and Bodios, gave the Liberian people justice. If he openly do these things, these three things, if he openly do it, he will have a good presidency. Other than that, 6 months, tell your people, 6 months after the inauguration, they will start crying until this president leaves.
So
it was 3 a.m. in the morning. I called my madam. I said, come. We were standing in the kitchen. I said, sit by the table. I want to share something with you. I said, I won't tell you about Liberia election. She said, okay. I said, George, I will be president. My wife almost trunk the parts to me because she said, I didn't see this coming. I said, well, he will be president. I went to church. I told in North Dakota, I said it. I told the church. People were upside down when I said Joshua will win the election. And they were like jumping on. Some people were angry. I said, no, just sit. Let me end the revelation and the prophecy for you.
Yeah.
George Manning Weah, then Senator Weah at the time, must walk away from fraternity organizations that he's part of. Do not accept names from the Zols and Bodio. Gave the Liberian people justice.
So
if he can't do this,
Jeroy, what is coming? What is coming, and that is coming soon?
Well, 6 months after the inaugural program, we see what is happening. I talk about the prior to the 16 billion. I talk about the protest. What is coming is this, and it's not hating. The president himself knows. There will be a popular uprising by the people. The people will wake up. The reason why they will wake up is this. The spell that they are on, that spell has been broken. The spell that the people are on, that spell has been.
What spell are they on? What is
demonic spell? Demonic spell. The reason why people don't carry on ritualistic killings and rape is to appease the gods that they serve. It's to appease the God that they serve. And God told me to speak and say, Jeroy, tell the president of the Republic of Liberia to stand down.
So what is coming is uprising. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there will be a popular people's uprising. The people will protest.
And how will it end? How will it end?
It will end in a way that the president will see that he can't go for second term.
Thank you.
If they cheat.
And you are saying this will happen before the 2023 elections?
Before the 2023 election.
All right. Your prophecy in the past, I have not listened to any to follow it to see as to whether those came to pass. I have this one. I will keep it because I don't believe in prophecy. Dennis?
Mr. Cummings, Evangelist Cummings,
Yes, sir.
people watching you will say what you are saying is politically motivated. You once endorsed opposition leader Alexander Cummings. How can we be sure that that is not what is driving what you're saying right now? Convince our audience.
Let me say this. 1997, 96, 97, I told people Chasteda will be president. And only the AK-47 were taken from Liberia. I was in a church and I was told that the prophecy was influenced by Chasteda and the late John Cummings, who was then the ambassador to Taiwan. And I just came from Buchanan. I was working for MSF France as a community health educator. Never met John Cummings until 2005, prior to 2005 election, when we had an opportunity to establish a political party. Then I was getting ready to go to Taiwan. And it was laughable because the pastor said, if Charles Taylor become president, they were praying for George to Washington. And I said, the chair you put over there is Charles Taylor that is sitting in that chair. And Taylor will become president. And the reason why he will become president, because it has been agreed in the spirit realm by people in this country to make him president. But there will be guns, there will be war in this country, people will die. And the pastor openly said in the church, if Taylor become president, he will hang himself. I got excommunicated. Me, they threw me out of the church. There were Nigerian peacekeepers in that church that God used me. I prayed for them prophetically, so they knew me. And they said, man of God, you got to come back. I said, listen, this pastor and myself. But then, listen, look at the timing. God called me in April 6th. Right. He started giving me these words, and I was excommunicated. Where you think I will go back? I went back to the war and said, God, if this is true, that you call me, then you will prove yourself. And it happened that Taylor won election. Let's check the history today. How Taylor left? War. People die.
So the question on whether this has been influenced by your endorsement of Mr. Cummings, what you say to that? We want to open our phone lines quickly. People are
that is a myth.
Okay.
That is a myth. That is a myth. I'm not one of the all my years as a talk show host, as a journalist, I work for some of the big boys. And when they speak to you now, you speak to them off record or on record, they will tell you that young man is a principle-minded man. I'm never belly driven, never, and will never. Cummings cannot influence me. As a matter of fact, if you speak to Mr. Cummings, he'll tell you, say, be afraid of Jeroy. When he speak as a man of God. I have no fear.
Thank you.
Say it's a myth,
yes, sir.
You did not endorse Mr. Cummings? Is that what you're saying?
Endorse? Oh, listen, let me say this. After carefully watching, I learned something from Vamuma Conan Jr. D. Muslim Cooper and John T. Richardson and myself had a clash. We had a serious clash. And Vamuma Conan hold me by the trouser. He said, "Come, Cummings, were you in Banga?" I said, "No." "Were you part of the war?" I said, "No." He said, "These are the architect. Even though you're part of a youth wing in the MPP, but these are the architect. My man, I saw you climb on the table and challenge John T. Richardson and D. Muslim Cooper. What are you looking for? You cannot fight the system alone." The former Free Zone boss, now representative, Vamuma Conan, hold me by the trouser. From that day, I walk away from politics. So after carefully observing all what is unfolding in our country, you can fight alone. You can. Nobody, no one individual. You must find an institution. So I've carefully watched almost everybody. If I wanted to endorse any presidential candidate, well, it would have been my former boss, Ben, Honorable Ben Ayure, who have been like a good friend and a father figure to me for many years. So the decision of Jeroy Cummings supporting an Alexander Cummings, I've carefully watched all the candidates.
Okay.
I'm not a baby. I don't join anything easily.
All right,
People,
let me progress again, folks, in cyberspace here. Please get your calls coming in. And if you have some questions for our guest, he will be more than glad to answer them. That's why he has taken the hot seat. While we wait for calls, this question. You said resignation are early warning signs.
Mhm,
Please explain that. That is one. And you also said those who are even resigning now
mhm.
are hypocrites.
Yeah.
You confusing me. Resignation, early warning sign. And then you went further by saying if you don't resign now
Mhm.
and stay there until 2021, whatever thing comes from there, you brought it on yourself. I see contradiction. Explain
Well,
that.
when I spoke about church leaders who are part of this system,
Mhm,
church leaders who are board members,
mhm.
and I was precise when I said, look, Bishop Clay and all of the pastors who find themselves on different board in this government resign. Do yourself an honorable favor, step down. Because by justice, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 4, by justice the king gives stability, and the ones who are greedy for bribe tears it down. So if you're part of a system that keep your people living in abject poverty, rampant corruption, mysterious death, and you are a prelate, step down. And I also said the resignation of government officials today are sign and symptom of things that we saw yesterday. They happened in the days of Samuel Doe. They even happened in the days of Charles Taylor. When Chief Cyril Allen had a disagreement with Charles Taylor on how Laird people wanted jobs. And if it is job, then let us give them job. Cyril Allen went on a house arrest. He went on a house, Charles Taylor had him on a house arrest. And the same people, some of the people who are resigning today, we listen to them go on talk show and call Liberians enemy of the state, the people that are not interested in in the development of our country, that these are people who are causing chaos in the society. But some of these people were in the system yesterday. And that's what I'm saying. They are a bunch of hypocrites. Because when people speak against the ills in society and you name them and brand them, and then today you're getting out of the system, then where is your level of patriotism to that institution?
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Let's take some call here, Dennis. We got Leo Johnson on the line. Leo joining us from all the way Canada. Welcome to Focus on Liberia, Leo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthony, for having me. Fascinating discussion tonight.
Mhm. Yeah, quickly to the issue.
Yeah, so my issue is I'm a bit confused. I listened to Evangelist Jeroy Cummings. He's someone I follow very often now and then.
Mhm.
And I'm confused because he seemed to rely on God and visions and processes all the time when he talks about the things he's seeing. But then when it comes to his active play into politics, it seems that God and the visions does not factor in. But my question is, with all of these things about prelates and people seeing visions about Liberia, goes way back. Some of us were not even born when we started hearing about it. My concern is when God showed people like you these visions, who is supposed to do the work? Or is the vision just supposed to tell us that the problem will happen, then the pastors wash their hands off and just walk away? Or is there a responsibility on the churches not to only speak out? Where is the responsibility on the building side? We see churches in slums. They are collecting offerings, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars while people die under their noses and young girls prostitute in the street. All of them combined. He means people like Bishop Reese and even Bishop Michael Pakala Francis. The Catholic Church has been under constant suspicion about sodomizing underage young boys in Liberia. In some cases where there were evidence and testimonies from people and they were never investigated under the watch of someone who I also admire a lot, Bishop Michael Pakala Francis. So for me, you can't have it both ways. Can he clarify for me how come at one end you can call on the church and invoke God, and on the scene another end you tell me, say, that you endorse politicians and actively participate in politics because you cannot solve the problem in Liberia alone? Are those decisions informed by God and visions given by God also, or you leave God out of those when you make those decisions?
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr.
Thank
Leo
you.
Johnson. Dennis, you want us to take one more before?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's take one more.
Okay, let's take Mr. Kier. Vincent Kier, quickly to
Hey,
the issue.
how are you? This is Vincent here calling from DC.
Okay, go ahead.
Also, this is a very big thing. A very big thing for the show. I'm monitoring the show since the beginning of the show. You know, it's very easy to become confused. I don't know how to say it. The first thing, for me, I'm a born Christian from my youth time up to now. I'm a Christian by birth. I'm a Christian by created. So I know how about Christian. Now it's discussing about prophecy. Even during the days, the prophecy come to you. You are the head of that prophecy before the person that is telling you going to the prophecy. In that prophecy that you're talking about, when Lord did he came on and even pray against it, and in that prophecy, God gave you revelation that after that happened, what will be the next step? He said, now what is about to happen is there'll be high riot. And after that riot, who you think that'll be that will take over the president and one? And all those reverend that you're discussing, who the reverend that you think that is speaking, that is believing in, that can help you out to carry a message up. So that's my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Evangelist. Let me take this next one, and then you will come in. Aliu Kamara, quickly. You have a minute, sir.
Why are you giving me a minute? Give everybody else 5 minutes.
No, I didn't get everybody
Anyway,
5 minutes. Okay, I gave you
I've been here for
1.5. Quickly.
yeah. You're giving my man how that when the women then can't understand the studio, then you have to the women inside. But anyway, Evangelist Jeroy, my man Puna, thank you so much. As for these questions that have been thrown to you, I don't think they should, because you have made your point crystal clear. You condemn the church's behavior, and you say that the church has not lived up to its actual meaning in the whole political issue. So for people to be asking you as if to say you're defending the church, no, you're not defending the church. It is also your right to say you saw vision and stuff like that. Me being an African, and I don't subscribe to all that vision stuff, but it is your right to say so. It's up to somebody to believe it or not to believe it. But let me just say this: the question that Dennis asked you about what difference has the church actually made? Has the church actually helped as far as governing? Look, let me be frank here. The church stay away from governing. The church stay away from the government because the church in Liberia, like Puna already said, the church in Liberia has not been playing the kind of role it should play. However, the Christianity alone is a political organization. Look at the history. I don't like to go into the Bible too much, but look at the history of the Bible. Moses, okay, he was a politician. If you look at all of these guys, they were all politicians. David who killed Goliath and ended up becoming a leader. So the church as a whole is a political entity. So, but thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to say most of these questions that are given to the evangelist, he already answered that he's not defending the church. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ali.
Evangelist. Just take the 2 questions that you got earlier.
Well, one of the callers said he talked about the Catholic Church being in a lot of allegation. If he can do his homework very well, there were people even in the church who left the church because of those same alleged allegations in the Catholic the Catholic Church. I was a member of the St. Anthony Parish. I was baptized Catholic. I left the Catholic Church because God called me to a different ministry. I didn't leave the church because of alleged sexual immorality. And like Mr. Kamara said, I'm not here to defend the church. I condemn the things that are unfolding and the church not playing a pivotal role. And the other man saying, if the vision or the revelation is given to you, should you sit back and allow another preacher, or are you a part of it? I think what people need to do is do some homework, because I've been out here speaking for years. Maybe you haven't been following. If they were filing, they will know. And the guy from Canada said, I endorse a presidential candidate. I support Mr. Cummings. Is it that I support the ANC? Look, I can support Mr. Anthony Sier, but I cannot support the methodology or the ideology of the institution he worked for. But I support his agenda. I support his vision. But is it the institution that I endorse? No, it's an individual. It's my constitutional right to do so. So I hope that answered the question.
Right. He also said whether that decision was informed by God.
you know, let me say this. The reason why it's laughable is so simple. I coined a word quite recently. In Liberia today, among us Liberians in the diaspora and back home, there's this university called the University of Doubt. And most people who are students of that university, they earn a degree in doubtingology. And the best way for them to earn a degree in faithology is when they can do some research and say, okay, this guy been speaking. Let me follow some of the things. Let me go to the Bible. What is it that the scripture is saying? I'm not deviating from anything. Most of the things I say, they have scriptural bargain. I'm not here to say I'm going to impose upon anybody. No, my decision to endorse the candidacy of Alexander Cummings is not based upon self-name. It's not based upon revelation that I received from God. Let me say this, Mr. C. You see, some of these people need to really listen. In 2010, I met Councillor Charles Walker Bronskin. May his soul rest in peace. In the office of Bishop John Kunkun. And I gave him a revelation of 2011 election. What will be the outcome of 2011 election? And the Lord told me, he said, tell him. When I met Councillor Bronskin, I said to him, face to face, man to man. I spoke and said, Councillor, the Lord said, I should tell you, put your house in order if you want to go to the presidency. Or else you may likely not go there. I said, can I convince you? He said, yes. I said, listen, Madam Sali will be president for second term. And during her second term, it will not amount to anything good that Liberians will really love. I said it in the office of Bishop John Kunkun. If the dead man could talk today, would talk. Few years ago, before the death of the late Honorable Thomas Jacob T. Wowoyu, I called Honorable Wowoyu. And the Lord gave me a revelation concerning his death. I told him where he would die. He would die in the hospital. Check the history. Where did he die?
Thank you. Let's stay on some of the things you said recently.
Let me come in, Mr. C.
Okay.
Yeah, because time is fast spent, so we'll be concluding this quickly. One of those things that you said, Mr. Evangelist Cummings, is the glory of God departed Liberia. Listen to me. I have 3 questions on that. What does the glory of God look like? That's one. What has been the timeline of the presence of the glory of God in Liberia? And what has been the manifestation of that presence of the glory of God?
When the ark of God was taken from the children of Israel and taken to Ashbon and placed before Dagon, taken to Ebenezer and taken to Ashbon, the people of Ashbon put the ark of God before Dagon. Bible says when they woke up in the morning, in the book of 1 Samuel, they woke up in the morning, Dagon fell flat on his face. The second time, he broke into pieces, and the pieces were in the threshold. In our country, we claim that this country was established on Christian principles. A nation established on Christian principles, ritualistic killings is on an increase. Sexual molestation, rampant corruption. 350 people lost their lives. No justice.
Right.
Nothing.
So
perpetual dependency syndrome on foreign aid.
Yeah.
But
so quickly, when was this glory of God present in Liberia? When did it leave? If why did they leave?
It was present. The presence of God has been with us all along.
When did they leave? When did that glory depart?
What is the benefit that we can point
12 years ago, 12 years ago, when we had the Queen of Sheba as a guest of honor, that very year in 2009, the Queen of Sheba was the guest of Ghana. The churches got up and told the president, if the woman come, we will revolt. If this woman entered this country, knowing the historicity of what we know, if she enter here, we will protest. That year, she became a guest of honor, July 26, 2009, in Banga. She was the guest of honor. I can name people who went there, prelay, who went to that program. I can tell you what happened that night, 2009, July 26, 12 midnight in Banga. I can sit right here and tell you word for word what was the atmosphere like. I was in Ghana. I was in Ghana when she went to Liberia. I was on.
If the glory of God were ever in Liberia, tell me the benefits that Liberian or the fruits of the glory of God in Liberia at the time. Is it something abstract, any physical benefit or fruits? I mean, tell me.
Lives were being transformed. Lives were being transformed.
When was the time lives were being transformed in Liberia?
From the embryo stages of our country. From the embryo stages of our country up to current, up to 12 years ago, up to 14 years before the 12 years, the presence of God has been in our country. When we started bringing diagrams, when we started introducing these things that are rampant today that we cannot control, the presence of God is not with us.
Wow. Well,
maybe you're looking for some tangibles. You're looking for some tangible evidence. Was the presence of God here? Did the sea, did the Atlantic Ocean on the coastal land open? Were there goals moving in our country? But from a biblical standpoint, I can tell you yes. I can tell you it is not.
Okay.
Because
do you have example of countries where the presence of God dwelled that we can use as a test case scenario?
I like that. Like in the days of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the people are still looking for sign. They're still looking for sign. They're still looking for tangible, where there are noticeable evidences in country, where the people praying, where they pray for the presence of God, for the mercy of God to reign supreme in their nation, to transform their lives. People will say, well, what about China? What about these countries where Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism being practiced, Islamic religion being practiced? What are the evidences? What are the signs?
So, Evangelist Cummings, the glory of God that you're talking about, it does not translate into economic development and infrastructural development. It is something just that pleases one inner spirit that, oh, I feel good. That's why it is, right?
No. The Bible says when the righteous rule, when the righteous rule, when evil men sit in offices, evil reigns supreme. Where the peace of God is, where the presence of God is, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is peace, there is liberty. Justice is at an equilibrium.
Right.
Where the Spirit of the Lord dwells. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. In our country today, the president has a church. But if he can sit in the church and say people's death was boyfriend and girlfriend business, where is the Spirit of the Lord in there?
Yeah. Evangelist Cummings, you said 2009.
So maybe you might be looking at it from an economic benefit. You might be looking at it from a physical benefit. You might be looking at it from a psychosocial benefit. But I'm speaking spirituality.
Evangelist Cummings, in 2009, President Sirleaf was president. You say that's the time the Queen of Sheba came, and that's the time the glory of God departed.
2009, we opened our doors. 2009, prior to that time, I remember I did an exclusive with Mother Bishop Esther B. Yeman, right? When Madam Sirleaf was named Zoe, do your research, right? Madam Sirleaf was named Zoe. When the Zoes and Bodios went to her and said, we came to present the country, the key of the nation to you. But these people were in our country. When the boys went to the different shrines, right? And they desecrated those places. Where was this key?
Yeah, I wanted to end the question because I remember the carnage from 1989 or 1990 to 2013 when Liberians were eating each other. They were murdering, butchering. At that time, the glory of God was present. You're telling me, and left 2009.
No, you hear me talk about 350 people died, right? You hear me if you go back to that tape, you hear me talk about the embryo stages of the world in our country when people became to eat human beings. When people kill, they put 11 men, 13 men on the pole. Prior to those 13 men, the deaths of Liberians in our country, all of the things that we did, the blood of the innocent cries out to God for vengeance.
All right.
That's why in Deuteronomy chapter 27, if you read, when the children departed Egypt, the presence of God was with them. When they deviated, in 28 talk about the blessings, the things your land will be blessed. In 7:14, it says you shall be blessed above all nations. Your male servant, neither your cattle shall be barren.
Thank you.
Can't you see the things happening today?
Thank you, Evangelist Cummings.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm from your how you pronounce it? That theology? Maybe I'm from that university. Let's get this call.
It will resonate soon. It's going to resonate.
With phone number ending in 8486. Your name and where you joining us from?
My name is Jerome. I'm joining you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, quickly, Jerome.
Okay. Let me just throw some light, my little understanding on the Bible when Evangelist Cummings is talking about the glory. The glory is not something that people you see you handle like money, because I heard you guys say when did the glory of God left, or when it was there and when it left. Okay, the glory of God was in that country. You remember that Liberia was a safe zone where all the country, where everywhere were fighting war or when trouble come, people would run to Liberia to seek refuge. The glory of God was there. It was covering the whole country at that time. When you hear Ghana was riot, people came from Ghana to come to Liberia to seek refuge. Not even Ghana alone. All countries have something that was bad, and people came to Liberia to seek refuge. The glory of God was covering that country at that time. The glory of God is the same way they say blessing. Blessing is not something like people think that you can give offering to the church and God bless you in different ways. You see, it doesn't mean that when you give money, God give you money back. So the glory of God left when the war came to Liberia, when our own people started to kill our own people. When young boy begin to tell old men that you frisky, sit on the ground, when all these things begin to happen in that country, the glory of God left. Because
Jerome,
the Bible says, honor your father and your mother.
Jerome. So when during the global war, the glory of God was there. During the Crew War, the glory of God was there. The Southtown War, when they killed the 13 men, the glory of God was just hanging there. November 15 invasion, glory of God was just standing by looking, right?
Now you're talking about the time that I was not even born.
I know myself was not born during
that
the Southtown
time.
War.
Yes, the glory of God was still there. Because when I was
and
born,
those people were getting killed.
People begin
and those people were getting killed, and the glory of God was still there.
All right, Jeroy, thank you. We have a couple of callers. Let's bring in a few callers.
Yeah. And before we go to the caller, this question is let me bring Jeroy to this. Evangelist Cummings, you said that you doubt whether the religious advisor to the president is serving the president well. And then you said something that people are faking it to make it. Who are those involved in the faking it to make it?
Brother C.
Yes.
The religious advisor to the president His role is to advise the president and guide him on spiritual issues, right?
Right.
But if you listen to Mr. Nimland or Reverend Nimland, when he called the president, Your Royal Highness, he started to lay out the different developments, the different projects the president is carrying out in the country. And he dwell more on those things rather than what is in the Bible to conscientize the nation, why there's a need for us, this program they has to pray for the president, why the Bible require us to pray for our leaders. But when you start talking about projects and this, and when the president was playing soccer, you are not a public relation officer. The Ministry of Information and Culture and Tourism is the custodian of information dissemination. When Bishop Mother Esther B. Davis, I beg your pardon, Esther Yema spoke on the ills and things that were happening, she was then the religious advisor to Madam Salih. Madam Salih disagreed with her. The woman intelligently walked away.
Okay.
We must speak truth to power.
All right.
You can love me, and I'm Evangelist Cummings. If I'm in error, tell me the truth. And if it means that it's going to help to guide me,
Evangelist
get on the
Cummings,
right
what most people are saying is everything that has been happening, it keeps happening. But people are using a different yardstick for President Weah. These things were always happening, and people, so the religious people you see today, that has been the pattern. Nothing different here.
But you may mention of the Sastan War. Let's go back to the Sastan War. The group that played a pivotal role to the end of the Sastan War, was it not the church? It was the church. I don't know much about the Grebo War, but because my family are from Grand Sesh,
right,
and Picnic and that of Maryland, so I was told. And then I learned to do some research. The church was the one that played a pivotal role to the end of those things. We're not saying that, well, President Weah is the biggest buku man. But you see, when people look at you and say you are the conscience of the society, you are a role model, we see you as the guy from Babla. We see you as the guy from Soniwi. We see you as the guy from Gobacho Market. So when you are in, we can see ourselves. Yeah, so we expect you to be by example.
That's fair. Let me take a few callers, just 30 seconds for each of our callers, then we can close. The first caller here is Bien.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Jad, and good evening, Mr. Anthony C. A brilliant and fascinating discussion this evening. And as I sit and listen to Evangelist Jeroy Cummings, I think so. I want to draw my perspective to the discussion relating to the leadership perspective of the national leaders as they come from the church perspective, right? I mean, because he's basically focused on discussing about the church leaders. And I would unquestionably say that today, in my generation, it's the first time that I feel myself that the church has not played their role. And I remain unbending and I remain unlending when it comes to such things that I say. The church has a role, but the church is failing to play the role. They are the cause of the problem in the land. Because if they're losing their relevance and losing their identity, that is discussing that these national leaders does not even respect them, does not even value the church, does not even value the history of the church, because the church have figured themselves with corruption, they have figured themselves with too many fractions, too many transitional sentiments, is grooming the church. So at the end of the day, the church will not look into the face of a leader and say to you, hey, you wrong, you ill, you must do this. They're not doing it, or because that particular person comes to the table and brings in gasoline and brings some solar. So this does not care to speak to the truth to the power. So if Liberia will progress today, if Liberia will move to the next level, it's about time that our church leaders goes beyond the walls of the church. Look at the COVID-19. What has the church of Liberia done? What has it done? What has it done to solve the problem? What have they done? They have not done anything. But they will say the government, but they are the one putting these people into power, and they're causing problems for the society.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Let's bring in Constant Duopo. Constant Duopo is next. Constant, quickly.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Jai and CA. To my dear pastor, you know the lady spoke perfectly. I am a Christian, but I think most of the leaders, they always pointed figures at political leaders. I am very, very disappointed tonight to listen to the pastor. I have a lot of respect for pastor, but in the first place, when he is saying the spiritual advisor to the president, because the person was like praising the president, these pastors that we see nowadays, most of them, that you have women calling their papa, the food that they don't get their own husband, the plate that they don't serve their husband in, they serve the pastor. They barely worship the pastor instead of worshiping God. And this pastor is here tonight. As the lady said, the church, what is called social work, everything came from the church. You give to your members. Nowadays, the only gospel they preach is prosperity. They believe that if you are poor and suffering, you are in sin. But when you are rich and you enjoy it, which means God blessing you. What will you say about Job that went through trials? You're talking about the glory of God. The glory of God is present every day in our life. But we always want to behave like Liberian people. We only want the best. When suffering and hard times come, then we turn our back. We say God punishing us. In the Bible, back then, didn't you see people suffer? Didn't you hear about wars in the Bible? People were fighting war. You're talking about back in the days. You want to tell me trouble time? The glory of God was there. Trouble time when all the natural resources were being looted because you are coming, so you want to come here and denigrate and talk down on leadership. And when you're supposed to be praying for your country, I am disappointed. You're the most of you're the one creating problems.
Thank you. Let's take our last caller for the night. Caller, your name and where you. Oh, Nelly. Nelly. You are live.
Hi, Dennis. How you doing? This is Dice. My name is Dice Cooper, and I'm calling from New York.
Oh, Dr. Cooper. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you so much, and it's good to be on the show. I'm very, like the last caller, I'm very disappointed in Cummings. I haven't heard about it, so I don't want to make him relevant. But he mentioned something about the Reverend Dr. Samuel Reeves. And I know he is a Farm Baptist pastor. I am a Baptist, and not just a Baptist, but a Christian. And Reverend the Evangelist Cummings mentioned about a vision and prophecy that he has some time back. And I'm wondering, as someone who is a pastor and claim to be a evangelist, has he reached out to Reverend Reeves about the prophecy he had? Because the same Bible that he speaks of mentions that if you heard something about someone, you don't come in and open and just blow it out and say whatever you want to, but you reach out to a fellow pastor. And so that's my question. Has he reached out to Reverend Reeves?
Thank you.
About this prophecy he had years back?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dash. Evangelist Cummings.
Let me go to the last column.
And Evangelist Cummings, because of time, you answer those questions and then you give your closing statement.
Let me go to the last column. Yes, my brother. Cooper, yes. It was discussed even in a live interview that I did with Dr. Reeves. I know him very well, so I did. If that answers your question, if you want me to play the tape, you follow my podcast, I can just refer you to the tape. It's there. I did an interview with him during the election season, and I know Dr. Reeves very well. It's not to criticize him, it's to speak the truth. Our love for people will always be there. But when people speak the truth, they do not insinuate. It's not fallacy, it's factual. I did. And to the last sister, the other sister who said, You see, one of the callers spelled out the thing. I'm not here to dignify or glorify a group of pastors. If you people are putting on an iron jacket and getting vests in defense of the things you say, I want preacher who believe what the Bible says in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 14. It says, you shall be blessed above all people. Your male servant and your cattle shall be barren. But don't run with that, because prior to that, Moses said, if you hearken and walk in obedience to this commandment. So it is there, my sister. I do not teach prosperity gospel. It is good for us to prosper, because in the book of Psalm 1:3, it says, you shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. Your leaves shall not wither. It will bring forth its fruit in due season, and anything you touch shall prosper. It's in the Bible. We must go to Sunday school and Bible study and stop making, these statements as though we read the Bible. Okay, so I don't subscribe to that, my sister. The pastors are not the ones who saying, oh, the leaders are doing this. We are conscious of the society. I started with Brother C. can bear me witness. In that podcast, it was the church. I there with the church. The following day, Bishop Darlington Johnson said the church failed. So why are you people wearing this iron jacket to defend your pastors? Go get vexed with Bishop Darlington Johnson. He said the church fails. Where? Failed in our teaching, failed in our preaching. Failed in so many things. Failed in so many things. A whole front page and a center spread newspaper article has been written. Are you people reading? Or because you love some preachers? Or some preachers are untouchable in our country and others are touchable, right? That is you. Maybe we're living in this state of utopia, in a dream world. So we need to come to the reality. And the last caller said, oh, I'm disappointed in Cummings. It's not for me to please you. It's to pass the information along the way. You talk about all those events as to whether the glory of God was present. The glory of God has been with us. God has given us so many opportunities. As a young boy who grew up in the borough of New Cruton, people quick, brother saying, people quick to talk about this thing about people becoming a part of a particular class. My Cummings is not a Congo Cummings. I'm a grandson of the Morgans. Check your history, my dear. The Morgans are Fulanis. We have a Fulani lineage. My grandfather from mother's side is from the Barbelo. I know my history. Maybe some of you don't know. And you people think that just one group of people belong to Liberia. That's why I speak Kru very well, because my mother is from Sastan. And there's a Kru woman. My father from Picnicet and Maryland. I speak Kru very well. I learned how to speak Kru on Fender when 11 members of my family were carrying us to go execute her, because my grandmother said, she's a Sastan woman. They said we were crowned. So you see, I don't believe in this ethnicity and classism system, because that's what Liberian pastors, the educated people do today. They have a particular class. I'm from the borough of New Cruton. I sold bottles to go watch movies. I know what they call poverty. You people, you need to graduate from this university of ethnicity, this tribe. Oh, because you are a Cummings. Oh, yes, I'm a proud Cummings. I am a proud Cummings. And a typical Kru Grable man, Bassa man too.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All
Your
right.
final thought.
Well, I want to extend my thanks to John, Brother John. I've been told we somehow connected, because you and my madam are family people, and Brother C, who happen to also be my kingsman, and all of us from the southeast. I know it's not
from Southtown, or Jeroy. I'm from Southtown.
Okay, so I know it's not based on ethnicity. It's based on the fact that, in news, we say anything unusual is news. And Brother C saw that what we were saying constitute news, so we were invited. And I'll say to you guys, thank you so much. I know the message may not resonate with some. I know some will accept it. I know some will do their homework, and we all will pray it. All I can say to Liberians is this: during the days of the war, Some of us said we will give our lives to God after the war. We will remain committed. Consistency and persistency changes one's life most, especially if he or she put his hand in the hands of God. And I pray that we will come together in unison and one accord, not what transpired in Genesis chapter 7, because what transpired in Genesis chapter 7, I see it today almost every time among us Liberians. But I pray and hope that by the grace of God, like Bishop Johnson said it, so Evangelist Cummings is saying it. I know other preachers will come out to say the same thing, that we fail. We fail. We must accept the fact that we're failing our congregants. We must accept the fact that we're failing our people. Not because you have an affiliation with the bishop, he know you, the pastor know you, you all went to the same school. We saw the same thing right here in Minnesota, in Hampton City. 5 fire trucks, 50 scholarship, because some pastors felt that City Mayor Flomo was not a student of Booker T. Washington, so he was not introduced when former Vice President Bwaka visited the country. What happened today? 20 people dying. Those 50 scholarship and 5 fire trucks and 1 fighter ambulance. Where is it? I got that document. If you guys want the document, all Liberia needed was just $60,000 to transport those things, and 50 firefighters were going to come to the city of Hampton to be trained. Oh, we can't say these things, eh? Oh, but you know, it is what it is. God's willing, the good people will wake up. And it's time for the good people to wake up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope this will not be the first time, and this will not be the second time. Please keep the tip. You will call me. Keep the tip.
Definitely will call you. And I read my Bible also when Jesus said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Yep. So I think the glory of God is still hanging around.
Thank you so very much to our listeners who have followed us throughout this broadcast. A special thanks to Evangelist Jeroy Cummings for honoring our invitation and delivering to the best of his ability. We discussed the church and politics. Somebody must say the church and the state. And we want to say thank you for following us here at Focus on Liberia. As you know, here at Focus on Liberia, we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We believe the church and its leaders do have a role to play in the affairs of the state. And that's the understanding we're trying to get, and I think we did it. Dennis Jah is the CEO of Focus on Liberia, and he has been here with me as we went into this topic. Thank you so much for watching. We don't usually leave you without playing the song that says, we are all Liberians. Whether you are like me, who still doubting that there is something called the glory of God, I am still Liberian. If you are Dennis Jah, who believes that that glory of God is still there, despite of the killing that went on in Liberia, that glory is still there in the midst of corruption, he's still Liberian. And like the evangelist who believes that God is that powerful man, he is a Liberian. Enjoy the song and bye-bye.
We are